All right, here we go. It is podcasting time. Colin Thomas is here from Essential Maintenance, and we will fix it Dubai, and we are talking DIY.
Are we?
We are. It's as simple as that. DIY. Everything you wanted to know, but were afraid to ask about your DIY environment.
It's crazy, this, isn't it? What we at? 70, 77, 78, somewhere around there?
Yep, exactly.
Ah, and I'm still kind of wondering whether or not this really is a DIY show. It's actually one of the things I love the most, which is the fact that we get to meander. You know?
Yeah.
It's we go in and out of DIY in such a fluid way to incorporate everything else that's part of life.
Yeah.
And for me, that is the magic.
Well, that's how we make it work. That's how we roll.
That is how we roll, without a doubt.
I want you to do something for me. You're holding that mic. Can you just push in the bottom part of the mic? Just make sure that the connector's in there. Yeah, I think that's good.
I think we're good, and it's coming clear through my headphones.
Okay, good. There we go. Then,
Mind you, you've got different ones on today,
yeah,
haven't you?
I brought the ones from home. I brought my
Your
my Sennheisers.
I love Sennheisers.
Yeah.
Mind you, my Sennheisers, I don't have anymore because I left them on an aeroplane. And there's nothing worse than that, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I got to, I mean, this is a fair while ago now, but I had that whole conversation of, please get me back my Sennheisers. I'll do anything. And I got that automated response back, and you're like,
Yeah.
no.
They're gone. They're gone. You're never going to see them again.
It wasn't Emirates. I've heard really good things about Emirates getting things back.
Okay.
But no, with another airline that I haven't been on since.
Oh, rats. I want to kick off the show, and we have all sorts of stuff we want to talk about. We and I have seen on the socials, We Will Fix It has got some great deals going on.
We've got some new services as well, which is exciting.
I saw that. So I want to talk a little bit about new services and things that you've brought in. But I first want to start off with a warning, a precautionary tale, a keep your eyes open, be vigilant.
What have I done wrong now?
Nothing.
Oh,
Nothing.
good. I can talk about that then.
Yeah. Water heaters.
Yes.
Hoses.
Yep.
And valves.
Ah, now I know where you're going.
Yeah. Water heaters, hoses, and valves.
Yes.
I just noticed you're wearing a name tag.
Yes, I am. This is something that Dan's brought in. And it's a very good idea, which is because we have got so many staff that have come to us in the last 6 months, we were getting to, and also we're now a group of around 100. So we were getting to the stage where we just couldn't fathom everybody's names. I mean, it's probably down to our age as well, more than anything. So
everyone's wearing name tags.
Name tags. And it was like, we did this in 2008 and then we gave up in 2008. So
but
yes.
in 2008, it was just the two of you.
I think we were at 5, and even then it was a struggle. So now, yes, name tags for everybody, including me. And it's I find it really useful actually, because when I forget my own name, I just have to look down.
So let's just jump back to the precautionary tale and the story, because it's a good one.
It is a good one.
My wife is in the kitchen. I've just taken the dog out for the nightly jog, and I'm probably 4 minutes out the door, and she hears rain. She's in the kitchen, and she hears rain above the roof.
Oh, that's odd for this time of year, James.
Yeah, that's exactly what she's saying. And she starts to notice water dripping out, and she hears it just, it's a geyser. It is a geyser. So she has the thought process going on. She's like, okay, this is big. She turns off the main valve in the kitchen.
Well done.
I know. Instantly,
what a good lady you've got.
Instantly stops everything, which was great. But this geyser went on for about 5 minutes and caused quite a bit of damage, actually.
Yes.
Which you wouldn't think there could be much damage in 5 minutes, but
I would.
Well,
I've seen it.
False ceiling. The hose is up there on the tank. So what happened was one of the hoses, in fact, it was the hot water hose coming out of the hot water tank, going into the valve on the wall, had ruptured.
Yes.
And part of in looking at it and doing some diagnostic and thinking, how could this happen and why would this happen, and etc. There a number of things have materialized, but the first thing to keep in mind for folks is it's not just your hot water tank that can go. It is the hoses. And if they go and you're not home and you haven't turned off your water, big issues.
Yeah. It's one of those as well where it sounds so basic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have a pipe, you have a hose that connects from that pipe to a water heater. That should be all pretty standard.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't
No.
at any level. So first of all, the pipes themselves, you look at a pipe and it's either normally green, in which case it's PPR here, or alternatively it is grey, in which case it's UPVC, which is high pressure PVC pipe. Well, unfortunately, for both of those, they might look the same. However, there is a very dodgy version which won't take the pressure that's required and won't last as long as you need it to. And there is a proper version.
Right.
Well,
so this one gets even better.
Yeah.
Because this was the flexible hosing.
Yes, I'm going to flexible hosing.
Okay. So you've got the dodgy potential, you got the green, you got the gray, and then you got the dodgy knockoff.
Absolutely. Then you get to the pipes. Now, as standard, there are 3 grades, of hoses. There are 3 grades of hose that are there.
Yeah.
Okay. If it is just a straight silver hose, which is what you had, that is the lowest grade that is available.
Of course.
Okay. If it is a braided silver with blue and red flecks in it, that's the middle grade.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a braided silver with blue and red flecks with a sticker with a red and white a design on it and a hologram, that is the top grade.
And that is what they put on finally.
Yes. Now, also be aware that there was, until very recently, a fake version of that as well.
No.
We got caught once with that, and a supplier we'd used for years, and we had to go back and replace like 20 flexible hoses that hadn't failed, thank goodness.
Oh, man.
But literally, we went back to him and said, what do you think you're playing at with us?
Yeah.
We've been with you for years, and you go and pull this stunt on us.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, sorry, supplier didn't notice. I'm like, no, it's your job to be checking on our behalf as well.
Yeah.
So we learnt that lesson. Luckily, that's when the holograms came in.
So this is the hose that went.
Yeah.
And turned the whole thing off. Fortunately, the hot water tank wasn't leaking or anything, which is nice.
Yep.
There's an issue, though, with the hosing and the hot water tank that only came to mind recently. Is, we've been in this place 22 years, so we've gone through a few hot water tanks. At some point in the life of my accommodation, when they changed the hot water tank, they clearly went to a larger sized tank.
Okay, yeah.
But they've put the larger sized tank on the brackets of the smaller sized tank.
Ooh.
So the larger sized tank hangs lower.
Yes.
Which, when you screw in the
pressure release valve.
So there was no pressure release valve.
That's lethal.
There's never been a pressure release valve.
That's lethal.
I'm pretty sure there's not any on any of my hot water tanks, which I might have to have you guys come and.
Yes.
So there wasn't so we're going to talk pressure release valve in just a second, but this gets even better. The hose that you're talking about with the holograms that should be, the best quality, going to work with heat, etc. Because the tank is larger than the original, hangs lower. The hoses go in, hook in, then have to go to the wall to the valves. Because it hangs lower, the hot water tank is closer to the ceiling, which means the hoses have to go at quite an angle, which causes more stress because of the heat and the pressure.
Yep. There was a way around that. That's just, you need a brass angle valve on that one to avoid that as an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of happens. Now, the other thing that you can do, it depends whether you've got the space above. But normally, if it was a larger size and going from a 50 to an 80, then in that situation, actually the diameter is very, very similar.
Okay.
What you can potentially do is just lift it and lift it on the physical, the same bracket itself, but just wind it in. So that way it goes up higher if you've got that space for it. Very few people would do it because it would mean having to take it down a second time, which is a pain in the neck to do. So that's one of those that is, it's bodgy, but it's not bodge.
Yeah.
So
we have the guys come in. The landlord has his technicians. They come in. First of all, first sign of we've got a problem on our hands is call them up, say, okay, got this problem. This is what it is. We've turned it off. I can tell you exactly what it is. Of course, they don't believe that I have a clue what's going on. I said, look, I work. Can you be here at 4:30? Oh, it's a little late in the day.
Yeah.
That is the first indicator that we have a problem.
Yeah. What about 9 o'clock? Oh, no, we can't do that either. That's a bit early in the day. 12?
Well,
no, we have a lunch break. Get the feeling I don't want it.
So finally, the gentleman, we get them to come. And they go up there and they take out the hose and they put in whatever hose they put back in. And it's all done, and they do the test, and it's working, and they leave. Okay, good. 2 days later, I wake up in the morning, taking the dog out for a walk, so it's 4:45. Go down into the kitchen, turn on the light. There's water streaming out of the cupboards.
Oh, great.
Exactly what I'm saying. I'm thinking, oh, maybe there was just some, naively at 4:45, I'm thinking maybe there was just some residual water trapped somewhere. Yeah.
Nah. Yes.
So I get out the ladder, I get everything out, I put up the ceiling tiles, and I notice on top of the cupboards, it is just covered in water.
Oh, God.
And I'm looking up, and so, you get the phone, you got the flashlight on it, and I'm looking, and what's happened is the hose, flexible hose that's going from the hot water tank to the valve, at the point where they connected it to the valve, I think two things were not done. Of course, they will deny it. First, there was no rubber washer in the hose. I'm convinced there was
That's
no
basic.
Yeah. Second, and I'll tell you why they didn't put one in and what they said about that. Second is usually, even in the best bodge, there's going to be some Teflon tape put around.
Absolutely.
One or two, maybe three revolutions. There was none. So I didn't even put any of that on. So so I'm looking at this going, and it's just a drip, drip,
Oh, for
drip.
goodness sake.
That over a day, so I, before I called them, I put something under there just to see, okay, how much water is actually coming out. And it would fill up a big mixing bowl. So that's quite a bit of water coming out.
Water.
So, okay. So I get them to come back, and they take another look at it, and they go, oh, because suddenly there's cupboard issues, right? Remember, I had my cupboards wrapped.
I remember.
Now we got a problem because some of the wrapping has.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
and they said, oh, no, we'll replace it. And I'm going, you can't replace the wrapping.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, in some of the places where I've had it wrapped, there's some humidity and things, and I the way they would do it again next time, but it's fine, but not where this water bowing now has happened. So I was like, oh, and I'm like you, and I'm just thinking, I'm going to hear it from my wife. Is there anything I can do before she gets up? Because
that's absolutely all I think about.
Yeah, it's like, how am I going to explain this? And it doesn't matter what I will say.
You're stuffed.
Yeah. So finally, they do come back, and they take a look, and of course they're sheepish at this point, right? And the guy comes back, and I say, look, it's leaking, and he comes out and takes it off. He goes, the water from the hot water tank was so hot it melted the washer.
Oh, my Lord.
I look at him, I go, really? I said,
that is the best one ever.
It's only a plastic washer, sir. Only a plastic washer. It melted it. The water was so hot.
Garbage.
You had it set too high.
And it isn't a plastic washer, it's rubber.
Rubber. It's
designed for boiling temperatures.
Okay. So they replace the hose. It's all fine. So all of the alarm bells are going off, right? We've had multiple alarm bells going off. The final alarm bell on the quality of the work goes off when they're leaving, and the third guy who kind of supervises and drives the truck and maybe knows what he's doing, maybe not, looks up and says, just leave the tiles off just for overnight, just to make sure it's all okay. And I'm going, so you don't trust your work at all.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, yeah, all right, I'll do that.
See, it's interesting, though, because that's something, and with plumbing repairs, there is actually a bit of legitimacy to it. If you've used Teflon tape. Because the Teflon tape, if you imagine, over time, it kind of just gets into its grooves, literally. And at that point, it can settle out, and you sometimes need a redo. But that is a drip every, 30 seconds type scenario.
Oh,
it's not a mixing bowl.
It was every 10 seconds. It was.
It's insane.
So we leave the thing off. Next morning, I go up and take a look. It's dripping.
Oh, for goodness sake.
I know. And at this point, I'm going, hold on. I watched the guy. That's exactly what I'm saying. But I watched the guy. There's enough Teflon tape on there to, do 10 houses.
Yeah.
I know that there was a washer in there because I watched the guy put it in and make sure. Well,
I hope it wasn't plastic.
No, it was a metal one. Sorry, it wasn't metal. It was a rubber one, but he had to go find one. So he's digging through his
But
bag.
that should come with the hose.
I know.
It's
So
a standard fit.
So I'm thinking, where'd you get this hose?
Oh,
And
God.
why did it fall out? And it's just like, oh man, you guys are killing me. So I go up there the next day. It's leaking, but it's not leaking. Now it's not leaking from the hose. Now
Yeah.
it's leaking from the valve. And so I turn the valve a little bit. It starts leaking more. And it's like, oh,
God.
I at this point, I'm just going, oh, this is no.
Painful.
I'm going, now I got to get them to come back and do this. And they've
Yeah.
already done a terrible job doing the other things. And the wife says, just call, we will fix it. Just call Colin. Call, we will fix it. Get the professionals in here. And the alarm bell before this, so we'll talk about this in a second more. But the other alarm bell went off right at the beginning when they came, because I said, hey, I've got another small leak happening with the main shutoff in the washroom on the ground level of the villa.
Yeah.
And there's a valve above the toilet. You can turn everything off. And it wasn't a big leak. In fact, it was a minuscule leak, but I would hang my jogging equipment on the knob.
Yeah.
And I woke up one morning, put on my jogging, and it's soaked. And I'm going, how can this shirt be soaked? I mean, I wore it yesterday, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Why is it soaking wet? Well, because it was collecting the water that was dripping from this, very minuscule one drip every minute, but it was still dripping. So when the guys came to look at the hose, I showed them this, and they took the thing off, and they took off the cover. The guy takes one look and says, yeah, we can't change this.
Yeah.
First of all, he says this is a different size than the smaller ones.
Yep.
Second, I don't even know if they're going to be available in the market because your villa's 22 years old. And I'm looking, I'm going, yeah, but it's a pressure valve and it is bigger, but I'm sure these are available because I've had another one fixed and they were able to do it. And he's going, oh, I don't, so his solution, he turns it. Okay, it's not leaking now. Just don't turn it off. So I said to him, but in the summers when I leave, I like to turn off my valves. And he's going, just go and turn off your pump on the roof.
Well done, that man.
And I'm just going, yeah, but what if there's there's a million things that could go. I like to isolate the water.
This isn't a coincidence that our whole industry has a bad name, is it?
So again, called you guys, called We Will Fix It Boys. They come on time, early actually, and they take a look. And legitimately, we'll start with the first one in the washroom wall. It is a bigger valve. It's a pain in the neck. It's 22 years old. It's rather corroded.
Yep.
They worked to get it out.
Yeah, it's painful, those ones.
But this one, nothing was broken. It's a nice cylindrical thing, but because of the brass fitting that gets corroded into the pipe, they really had to use a couple of different wrenches to get it off. But they did. And a nice rack thermo valve went back in, and it was perfect.
Good. I'd expect nothing less.
It was fixable.
Good.
Very easy. The second one was interesting because they went up, and as you said, first of all, on the hot water tank, there was no pressure valve. Second, they noticed they had the wrong hosing. And third, they go, yeah, this is this valve on the wall that we've got to hook into. Yeah, it's nice and old. It's corroded. It needs to be changed.
Yep.
And as they're up there doing that, they go, by the way, the other one, there's two up there. There's a cold water and a hot water. And they go, the cold water, yeah, it's also leaking. I was going, really? He goes, yeah, we better change it too. Which is common sense, right? At this
absolutely.
point.
Part of what we try and do is to advise people when something is coming.
Yeah.
Which is rare, actually, when with plumbing repairs, because normally they're that dramatic that people know about it. But when you have one that's just starting, it's good that you can catch it at that stage. It's only going one way.
So it just reminded me, keep your eyes on these things. Keep your eyes on your hoses.
Yeah,
Take a look at them, because you'll start to, you can start to notice where things are going. If they're, you can start to see leaks, especially if it's from valves.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well before it's a problem. And
it's good news it worked out. That could have been properly painful, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to help out in those situations.
Yeah. So it was all solved, but it was painful all the way around.
Yeah. There's nothing good about leaks.
It took out the lighting in the kitchen.
Yeah,
so suddenly the LED lighting had to be replaced.
Oh, that's a shame. So it wouldn't just dry out.
No, it really, I mean, I guess it might have at some point, but it really looked horrible.
Yeah, no,
and so we replaced it, which was fine, but it was, yeah. And then a few ceiling tiles as well.
Yeah, always the ceiling tiles. What a pain in the neck. It's lucky they're cheap. That's the only thing.
That is the only thing. It's just like, okay, I can go get a box. But, they just went and picked a few up, brought them over, and it's just like, yeah, okay, I've gotten them before. I know this deal. But
the frustrating thing with ceiling tiles is that they always degrade over time. So then you end up with some white ones alongside some yellowy ones. And, ugh.
So it's almost like you just go and spend a couple hundred dirhams every few years and just replace them.
Exactly.
And actually, I see a lot of people doing that. So
done it in one of our bathrooms, and it's the best way. Normally for the kind of the T-section frame, a bit of Jif works a treat.
Oh,
so you can just literally clean it off, and you don't need to redo the frame unless it's been twisted. If it is, again, with that tends to, because it's powder coated, it tends to last a lot better than the tiles themselves. So you can normally just Jif the remaining ones or the original ones, put new ones in alongside, and you won't really notice.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, ceiling tiles, it's an all or nothing job.
How's the stuff going at your place? You'd had some copper tubing that was going. Any new developments on that? Or
that's all sorted.
Okay, good.
So 2 different areas. That is a constant problem. So it was a good logic from Email when they did our properties in Sahil. It's not all of the ranches, but in Sahil, which is copper is the most resistant of all of the issues, and it should be a fit and forget.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know how we were talking about different grades?
Yes.
Comes in copper pipe as well, as it happens.
Oh, come on.
So all of Sahil...
I really thought copper pipe was copper pipe, but why would I think that?
It's the thickness on the whole. The material itself is pretty standard, but the thickness, and it just degrades over time, unfortunately, as well. So, yeah, lots of Sahil properties getting those issues. Because it is very expensive to redo the whole lot, we patch it, which is exactly what we've done at our place. But again, once you normally need to cut holes in the ceilings to be able to do it, so they've got a ceiling repair, which makes it all expensive as well. Yeah. But the idea is, and again for the preventative, once you've cut one hole, make it big enough for your head to go in, so you can then check the rest of the pipes in the ceiling and see if you've got any other issues at the same time. So I've done like 3 or 4 now in total at our place, and now our boys are so good at ceiling repairs.
But if it's happening at your place, it's got to be happening in all the accommodation around you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people might not even realize it until it comes through.
And then at that point, it's one of those that unfortunately, unless it does mess with your electrics, again with copper, it will be very slow in terms of the degradation. So as soon as you see a mark on your ceiling, and normally it will look like mold, like grey mold, because that's in effect what it is. Yeah. But at that point, you are cutting the ceiling to get in there on the hole, unless you happen to have an access hatch near to it. But it's such a it's one of those jobs that if you put it off, it will just get worse and worse. So you might as well get on with it.
Well, you right at the start of the show, you were talking about some of the new services you guys are offering.
Yeah,
and I think that kind of fits in nicely with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so we've launched We Will Fix It Express, which is specifically designed for AC failures. Oh. So if you imagine the logic of a customer, we've talked a lot before about when you call an AC company, if they're available immediately to come during the height of summer, then they're not a very good AC company because they should all be booked up solid. Well, what we kind of realized was for customers, that's a really irritating scenario, isn't it? Yeah. So in the same way that you have when you get an Amazon delivery or when you're you have that express service or Prime as it would be with Amazon, we thought, what about if we moved that into maintenance? So instead of the normal 3 to 4 hours, we hold teams back on specifically for the express service, which means that we can get to them to a customer within 4 hours.
Wow.
It comes with an additional premium, so it's 200 dirhams call out, 200 dirhams per hour. But again, if there is a follow-up booking, then we will credit 200 dirhams, the diagnosis feedback to the customers.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is a new concept for us. It's going really well so far. What it needed was you wouldn't believe the logistics behind that to make it work.
Well, what do you got to do?
Extremely well. So first of all, it requires, because we want to fix it in that one trip, even if there's a hardware failure. Actually, let's start off with no hardware failure. What it means is our vans need to be stocked to the gunnels, and also now that we've
I did notice that when the guys came to my place and I went out and took a look in the van, he said it's like a hardware store in here, and it was.
Alex is slightly notorious. If he's not driving uphill in his van constantly, then he feels as though there's something wrong. And bless him, because he can do such a variety of things, we let him ride with it. But I mean, we know it's Alex's van. We don't even need to see them because literally it's pointed upwards every time he's driving it. But again, what we found now is there's two scenarios with that, which is for the express teams, yes, we stop them beyond belief. They have 30,000 dirhams worth just of spare parts in their vans.
That's crazy.
But equally,
how many vans you got going?
Now, at the moment, probably about 44, 45 now.
That's a lot of rolling inventory.
Yeah, it is. But we keep that specific to those express teams.
Okay.
To support them, the rest of the teams around them have different stocks in their vans in addition to their standard stuff, so that if we need to get it, then a driver can duck out from one job and get it to those express guys as well. Then on top of that, we've got a team of 7 now in the purchasing department who are there to prioritise those express repairs, get onto the supplier. We have drivers that are sat in those locations simply to pick it up and take it to the express if we can complete it at the same time.
Wow.
Failing that, we hold follow-up slots now as well as the express slots, so that when that part is available, we are able to book it for express customers. So it's the whole separate ecosystem that relies on the bigger scenario that we've got and the scale that we've got now to be able to make that happen effectively. So it's a really difficult one. But I'm just
thinking the logistics of coordinating these teams.
Yeah.
And if they interact with the Essential or the We Will Fix It teams,
they all need to, it has to be ridiculously organic.
Yeah.
In the way it works. Also, because of the nature, we've got specific guys that are working on the express diagnosis side, and because it's now going to be a different team most likely that will do that follow-up, the level of briefing that's required between Team A and Team B
is huge.
Is absolutely huge. Yeah. So a lot of work has gone in the background to make sure that process is seamless and works. So we're really happy with it so far. It's early days and we're very much beta testing it and taking it as slow as we possibly can, which is difficult in the heat of summer when there's a lot of demand there. But to try and make that work effectively is really what we're trying to do. And again, first in the market for this kind of thing.
Lots of AC failures right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely loads. I mean, to give you an idea.
I had one freeze the other day. I mean,
that's a low pressure issue normally, or that the coil is extremely dirty, which means the air slows down so much as it's going through that coil, and that the water vapor comes out because it cools down so far.
I know the last time they had it cleaned 6 months ago, maybe they did a full, took everything apart and everything. So
okay, well if they did coil clean it and coil clean it properly, which again, coil clean and proper coil clean are two very different things.
Yeah.
Then it won't be a coil, but it could be a low pressure issue, without a doubt. So for coil cleaning, the difference between a good coil clean and a bad coil clean is normally the middle of the coil. So most people will make it look decent on the outside, but they should shine a light through it to see what the middle of the coil looks like. And then at that point, that's when you tell the difference between a good coil clean and a bad coil clean.
Okay.
And yeah, there are times when even we get caught out. And when it's because our technicians did not follow the process. So immediately they go back onto retraining, and we're then at the stage where they're back with a senior tech, and until they've done another 3-4 coil cleans, and they are totally 100% with the process that we've taught them, then they don't get back on the road.
That's good to know.
Has to be the way.
Well, I hope this whole system works out well, and it'll really be great for customers, because there's nothing worse than the AC going out.
Yeah, it's just trying to get that speed into something that by its very nature. But there is still a problem in the UAE, which is our spare parts suppliers are not the quickest. So physically going and getting FaceTime with them rather than a phone call is often what we need to do. And a combination of both is normally pretty critical. But even then, we've got to be honest, it's still pandemic times. There are still logistics issues, and we make that clear at the time of booking. So we will be as fast as we can, but we're still at the mercy of our suppliers.
People forget that we're still suffering through logistics supplies, products not available.
It's insane. I was listening to Glenn talking about it from a car perspective this week, and the problems that the car dealers are having here, and spare parts for Glenn. Well, we've got exactly the same scenario for us. It's really difficult. Luckily, because over the years we've built up not just a single supplier for each part, but normally we've got 3 or 4. So, but it's just more work for the purchasing team now to go through all of the suppliers rather than our traditional preferred supplier if we've got a problem on parts. So,
when you arrived today, you were searching for a word, and the word was mohair because
Yes.
we wanted to talk about painting.
Yes, absolutely.
And actually, that was something I saw on the We Will Fix It Instagram page. They were talking about shelves and little touch-ups and
Yeah.
doing some of that DIY stuff around the house, and painting was one of them.
Painting is an interesting one because there's that general perception that anybody can paint.
Yeah.
And the reality is anybody can paint to varying levels of success.
It's like putting up wallpaper. Anyone can put up wallpaper, but you don't want anyone putting up wallpaper.
Yeah. I have seen walls where genuinely I think I could have thrown the can better. I mean, I've seen somewhere, I just... you stood there looking at it, and there was a job that we took on, and I'm really irritated that the team didn't spot it beforehand. But there was a job that we took on where there'd been successive paint jobs that were so bad.
Oh no!
That it didn't matter how our lines were perfect. I was really happy with the work that we did, but the problem was because it'd been painted in the same color 2 or 3 times previously, it looked terrible. And in the end, we spent another 3 days having to clean all this off because the customer's like, is this your standard? I'm like, look, you can clearly see that these are different. Oh, so you don't clean that off as standard? Well, in all truth, our lines are our lines, and legacy issues are something totally different. Otherwise, I'd be trying to charge you for another 3 days, which is totally uneconomic. You would have never taken the job. But it should have been raised beforehand with the customer, which is why you went free of charge to do all this additional work, which meant we lost money on the job.
Well, and this is, I think, the number one point about doing painting, preparation.
Oh, goodness knows, yes.
And the preparation, forget about the fact whether you're a lousy painter.
Yeah.
If you don't do the prep work as you're leading into it, you're doomed. And the prep work is huge.
Also, people don't estimate correctly how long it will take them to paint a room.
Yeah.
So your average bedroom in Dubai, we as professionals would paint that in 4 hours for a team of 2, which is 8 man hours.
Yeah, that's that's
my guys are really efficient in the way they operate. So if you imagine yourself wanting to do that DIY, I don't think you would necessarily estimate a flat out day for you to be able to do it. Well, that's what we do it in. We know what we're doing and have all the materials we possibly need to be able to do it. It's 1 full man day to be able to complete that.
Wow.
So for Joe Public, if they did it in a day and a half for an average bedroom, they're doing really well.
Yeah, you're looking at 2 days.
Yeah, I think 2 days is probably where you would be.
No one's expending 2 days on that job.
You wouldn't have thought so.
No.
Yeah, which is where it gets interesting. But then, equally, to understand the value of doing that is where it would get very difficult. So the difficulty with that is, so for us, the way that we would measure it is our standard labour rate. 100 dirhams call out, 200 dirhams per hour. So that's 900 dirhams of labour.
Yeah.
Paint for a room, 2 gallons, you'd probably be looking at another 250 dirhams. So therefore, you're looking at, 1,100 to 1,200 to get the room painted into the colours that you want. However, the reality of that is most people go, this room, 1,200 dirhams, you're having a laugh. There's no way. Well, that's where the difficulty comes. So they then go, let's look at a cheaper option. Anyone know anyone who's painted before?
Yeah, who's used a painter? You see them all the time.
Oh, I've used so-and-so. He's fantastic. You get on the community groups, okay? When you actually research into that and you see how the advertising is working now, as you know, I run the Arabian Ranches group. So we have a complete ban on all commercial posts, okay? I do not advertise We Will Fix It on there either. I'm a resident, and this is a residents group, which I keep stressing to people. Oh, no, it's only me. I'm a new business. Well, no. We have a complete blanket policy. What? Not even for me as a resident? No, not even for you or for me as a resident either. Yeah. But this is what is happening now on the majority of the residents groups here, where you don't have people like our team who are absolute rottweilers for rooting out dodgy members. Which is, it is very, very easy for people to post a recommendation about their own company. It's very, very easy to get to build fraudulent profiles, and you can buy them for a couple of dollars each for a fraudulent profile that has all of the backstory that you need to look legitimate, unless you look really carefully.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's widely available. So it's something where these days, unless you physically know the person, you 100% trust the group as being managed correctly, don't trust a recommendation, because it's just rubbish. It really is.
The little things that I always forget about when we talk about prepping a room, is sanding, taping. Well, first you got to tape things up.
Yes.
And that's a long, arduous job.
That's the most arduous job.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially if they do it themselves, they skip it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is roof or no roof.
Oh, yeah.
So do you need to repaint that ceiling? Now, generally, ceilings don't need to be repainted as much as walls, because obviously kids and wear don't tend to get to the ceiling unless you've gone utterly crazy after a couple of margaritas. So, but again, after a number of years, it will start to yellow. They're normally white, aren't they? So it'll start to yellow. So there's a decision to be made whether or not you're doing it. If you're painting the ceiling, it's really easy to paint a ceiling, assuming that you've got the pole and the other bits and bobs, and you don't even need to cut it if you're going to paint the walls as well. So therefore, go over the edge, do the edges first, without a doubt, with a paintbrush, go over the edge, and then let it dry properly. If you don't let it dry properly, so that normally would be 3 to 4 hours, then at that point, when you put the tape on, it'll look absolutely fine. You'll get your walls done, and then you pull the tape off, and it all comes off with it. That's when you're in deep, deep trouble. Now, that actually still happens anyway if you're just painting the walls, because there's quite a lot of dodgy paint here in Dubai. There was a certain brand that is produced somewhere near a roundabout in Sharjah that is named the same, or traditionally colloquial name the same.
Yeah, that roundabout's gone now. It
has gone.
But it's still called that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And just in case you didn't know that, they reminded us a few years ago where, unfortunately, during a fire, their paint was fired onto the roundabout as it was then nearby. That is just a disaster. Without a doubt. Actually, this is important to say that it's for latex-based paint, and that oiled paint is a lot better. So that's the first thing. Second thing is type of paint that you use. So for walls, don't use oil paint. Don't use oil-based paint. It is latex that you need. Emulsion, it's also called. You can either use matte or vinyl silk. There is only those two versions. Yeah. Which is a halfway house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
It's useful when you've got high traffic areas or kids.
Okay.
The problem is it comes with a half sheen.
Oh, okay.
And therefore, with that half sheen, you can see imperfections in the walls. So if you've got rubbish walls, you want matte so that it doesn't highlight all of those rubbish areas.
Right. Okay.
Oh, we missed your sanding in between, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that's filling.
Okay. So would we've taped before we do the sanding and the filling?
Depends where the filling is. Okay. To be fair, the way we work in teams of two, you'll have somebody filling at the same time as you've got somebody taping. Okay. If you're doing it yourself, probably finish the filling first, thinking about it on the whole. Generally speaking, the whole idea with filling is to use as little filler as possible.
Right.
But it shrinks. So the way you want to do it is do it twice. Take it down. Do not leave any excess on there first time round. Let it shrink in, put a second coat, just literally a skim coat over it. It will dry really quickly. And then the lightest of sands is all you require. If you overdo it, you've got a pain in the neck on your hands, because if the rest of the wall has been painted more than once, there'll be a certain texture to it. When you sand it, the whole area, because you've got to over sand it, the whole area becomes smooth, which means when you paint it, you can see the difference, especially if you're using vinyl silk.
Okay.
So therefore,
this vinyl silk is sounding like the paint I do not want to use.
It's difficult. But again, if you are in a high traffic area, matte, because it has less latex in it, does not stand up as well.
So fill the holes, fill the cracks,
tape it. Yeah. Edges next. Okay. So
edges.
Start with the edges with a paintbrush. So that way,
so there's no shortcuts here.
No,
not really.
There is no shortcut there. There are all sorts of gadgets that you'll see in Ace Hardware. You know, these foam corner jobbies. Garbage. Doesn't work.
Oh, really?
Absolutely rubbish.
They're going to tell me they're great.
It's rubbish.
Yeah, okay.
Without a doubt. It's a paintbrush, without a doubt, is the only way to really do it properly. Give yourself a decent area. So you should
new paintbrush, or just a nice cleaned one that I've got sitting in the backyard?
Okay, so there's a halfway house
And,
here.
and
again.
you've got the cheapest paintbrush there. I got my 2 Durham paintbrush versus my 20 Durham paintbrush.
Okay, so the difference in paintbrushes, you can go pretty cheap. To give you an idea, I will normally use, if I'm doing my own, I'll normally use a like a 1 inch for latex painting, and I'll pay 7 dirhams for that.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I will accept a few problems with that 7 Durham paintbrush. It will drop the odd hair,
Yeah.
and I will fish it out with my finger because it's water-based paint, and I can clean my hands really quickly. For a 20 Durham paintbrush, in fact, probably more than that, you'd be looking at like a natural bristle, which is finer, really good for oil-based paints. Will work perfectly well for latex. It's just a little bit overkill considering you're going to go over the top of the majority of the paint that you've just done for the corners, both sides of the corner. Or the top with a roller. So the idea is that the roller will actually create the final finish rather than anything else. Okay. Normally, for roller painting, you would want something of a medium nap. So you don't want
but back to the side. So with the brushes, make sure that I do all the corners and stuff first with the brush. One coat, just one coat.
Yeah, one coat. You might need 2. Just depends if you're doing a color contrast.
All right, but just get that done with the brush. There's no shortcut, so don't look for the shortcut. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, absolutely. And
then we can start thinking about the rollers.
A couple of inches either side. If you don't have much knowledge about brushes, stick with Harris. It's the main brand here, and they're solid. And their cheaper range is good as well. I just wouldn't. I don't know what it is over the years, but I literally look at a paintbrush, I give it a quick pull, and I know whether it's legit. But for most people who aren't as sad as I am, they probably just stick with Harris. You're fine.
Stick with Harris.
Yeah. So we're at the stage of painting. Right, critical thing. Make sure that you've got plenty of paint on your roller.
Which means you've got to have your drop cloths everywhere.
Yes, very good point.
So you've already taped everything up.
Yeah, it's part of the taping process. So normally we would have, rather than drop cloths, we would normally use plastic sheets.
So cover everything with plastic, cover your windows, got it all covered so that there is going to be no spillage anywhere.
You'd be amazed how far paint can flick off a roller. It never ceases to amaze me. So you cannot, it needs to look like a scene at CSI without a doubt before you start.
So again, that when we talked about the time investment, with the setup, after you've done your sanding, after you've done your filling your holes, and you've refilled them again, and then you've sanded them a little bit, you've taped up your ceiling, you've taped around your windows, you taped your floor, you put down your drop cloths, your plastic sheeting. That alone is going to take you quite a while to do. 2
hours normally. About that.
That's before you even start painting.
Yeah, the painting's the quick bit. Yeah, that's nice and easy. It's all in the prep without a doubt. Yeah, actually, and the finish, which is kind of key as well. So we've then got to. So we are painting at this point, and let's assume that we now rollered all the walls, and you've got one coat on.
Right.
Take a step back. Have a quick look at your walls. If you are color contrasting, in fact, no, there's just a straight scenario here. There is no scenario whereby one coat is enough, unless the only reason you're doing it is because you've got a rubbish landlord who is insisting that you paint.
Right.
Again, still in that scenario, have a look again at the walls. If it does not look like an even finish, your landlord is still going to charge you, and you've wasted your time. So therefore, while you're there, put a second coat on. Okay. Now, there's certain colours that don't cover as well as others, which is interesting because I sat down with the head of Ace Paint Worldwide to have this discussion with him about the problems I've been having with his paint at the time. And he was very, very impressive, I must say. So I gave him the paint colours that I wanted him to paint with, and I showed him the problem. And they reformulated their paint.
Really?
Yes. So greens is an absolute classic. Reds are as well. And both of those...
they don't cover well.
They just don't cover well. It's just the pigment within it that is a real pain. So with those, and especially imagine if you're going light on those colours, it looks really patchy and can do even after 2 coats. Plan on 3 if you're going high contrast.
So that ups the amount of paint you're going to buy. So
yes,
you're looking at 3 gallons probably.
Well, the thing is, there's also an equator. Which is...
An equator?
Yeah. The equator is price-wise between individual gallons and a drum, which is 4.8 gallons. I think that's right. That sounds right. We call it 5 gallon anyway, 5 gallon drum. And it basically sits at, normally, if the pricing is where it should be, it sits at about 2.6, 2.7 gallons is the equator of a big 5 gallon drum. So if in doubt, buy the drum. because. And again, you might need touch-ups in the future. So, assuming that you're going for it, then away you go. Now, standard though, if you're in a standard Dubai bedroom, again, it's a good one people can imagine. If you're in a standard Dubai bedroom and you're not doing a high contrast of colours, 2 gallons is enough.
Okay,
but it's close. It's really close. So, if you knew what you're doing and you're confident and you're not doing a high contrast, 2 gallons. If you're getting either high contrast, so different colours between before and after, away you go. Next little trick, which is if you've got really dark walls and you're going to an off-white colour.
Who would do that?
Plenty of people.
Okay.
If the property's been left in that condition and you're like this thing, and dark colours, I don't know why people do it.
Yeah.
But because it just closes in a room quite dramatically as far as I'm concerned, so stay light. However, in that scenario, instead of paying more to get the same top coat colour that you're going to finish with, just buy white. White is the cheapest paint out there. Buy white, but buy good quality white, and therefore do one coat of all the walls. It's kind of called the knockback coat, and it just knocks out the majority of that colour. Because even if you put lots of off-white colours over the top of it, you tend to find that you don't get the same colour that you were planning with originally. It's always darker.
So you put a knockback on.
Put a knockback first, and then go for the main colour.
And how long are we letting paint dry between coats?
So that's the big question mark here in Dubai. Because in the summer, if you didn't have AC in that room, by the time you'd finished on one corner, you could just keep going and away you go. If you've got the AC on, then it depends, because the AC itself will, dry out the walls because the circulation of air and an AC unit acts like a dehumidifier anyway. But equally, because you reduce the temperature, it's one of those where it's like, I just kind of know. Normally, assuming that you had the AC on at quite a rate, and again, when you're sanding, turn off the AC, otherwise it will totally destroy the coil, then I would still be able to keep going. So we wouldn't need to stop. Again, imagine lunch breaks, tea breaks, that kind of thing. Use that as drying time as well, because you're not going to be working on it anyway. So and put the breaks in where it works the best. Okay, next thing, we've got all the walls done. We're happy with the walls and the ceilings. Time to take off the tape.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've left it a couple hours though, right?
Yeah, ideally leave it a couple of hours before
overnight,
you do that. If you've got that time available, then yes.
Because if I'm doing it myself, I've got time. Although I'll be in a rush because we've already spent 2 days if we're doing it correctly.
Which is a weekend.
Yeah.
And you're back to work.
Yeah. And so, no one wants...
But again, the big advantage is because you've done the edges first with the brush, that's actually pretty old paint at this point. So normally you wouldn't have to wait too much longer unless you know you've got some overruns. Okay, so for matte, the tape will come off pretty easily without causing you too many problems. There's a good chance that some will have crept somewhere behind the tape, in which case you need to use just a Stanley blade or something to gently tease it off.
Gently.
If it's
Gently
new...
tease. Gently tease.
Yeah. If it's new, it should come off quite easily if it's latex paint, not oil-based. Okay? Now, the problem is vinyl silk. So the increased vinyl...
There's no reason I want to use that paint now. I mean, like you've dissuaded me.
Well, it is good for certain reasons.
You keep saying that, but now we got another problem detaping.
Wear abrasion is the whole point of it.
Wear abrasion.
But basically, that latex is a bit like, remember the PVA glue you used to have?
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Okay.
Now, the problem with PVA glue in paint is when you try and pull that tape off, it doesn't want to come off right.
Right.
So therefore, you need to use that Stanley blade down the edge of the tape to get a nice even cut before you pull it. If you do it as you pull it, the paint is already detached from the wall and you're in trouble.
Okay.
Certain brands are better than others for vinyl silk, and without a doubt, we'd always use Jotun. We wouldn't.
Okay.
It would take a customer, and we've had it before, to a customer for us to say, we don't know this paint.
Yeah.
Anything could happen. We might have to repaint the whole wall in Jotun afterwards, or we'll go with your option. What do you think? And then at that point, and some people have got really big issues over paint and the nasties that can be in it. which I totally respect. But we are going to have that caveat there because it is an unknown entity. It might have worked in the US, but then in the US, the ambient temperature isn't as hot as it is here. So therefore, it can cause problems. There are problems with certain Jotun products as well, I can say, but more exterior paint. So it is one of those things that just comes with experience.
So I've pulled off the tape.
You pulled off the tape, you cleaned up. And at that point, we're pretty much good to go.
Touch-ups? I might have to do some touch-ups.
Oh, yeah, you'll have touch-ups. So keep bits of paint and the different colours so that you'll be able to touch up as you go along. For touch-ups, don't use a 1/2 inch or even a 1 inch brush. Use an artist's brush. So that way, you won't see it if you just use an artist's brush. If you splodge it, you will end up with a Frisian cow on your walls and ceilings. Cow. Yes. It looks terrible, people. Do not do it. Am I allowed to be that direct on this podcast? I hope I am.
You are. I think we've given everyone a nice little basic primer, a tutorial on painting.
Was that way too long?
It was excellent.
It felt like it was way over that 13 minutes I'm supposed to aim for.
Yeah, no, it was excellent.
There's a lot of information. Let's do it DIYing. We've done proper DIYing.
Yeah, we've done
James.
DIYing. But the mohair, where's the mohair coming?
Right, this is oil based.
Okay.
So
what am I gonna oil based paint?
So either wood or metal is the general scenario.
But what? I mean, my baseboards, door frames. Sorry, door frames.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And also, if you wanted for whatever reason to, you had a radiator or a gate. There we go.
Oil based.
All that kind of stuff is oil based. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't use latex under any circumstances. Now, for oil based, you need to start off with a primer first under all circumstances, without a doubt.
Sand a little bit, then put the primer, a little bit of.
Yeah, well, if it's got loose stuff on it, then sand it, but give it a quick wipe down anyway, and away you go. And then, see, what I use a mohair roller for is on wood, is what I would normally use. And in that situation, I want as even a coat as I can get. And even with oil-based paint, I just hate the look of gloss. It just looks old school to me. So I tend to go matte anyway. But I want it as consistent as I can get. And you can't get more consistent than a roller. So therefore, a really short nap roller, which tends to be mohair. Yes. Yeah, useful that, wasn't it? Right. I mean, the cheap version is foam, but foam again will still give you a texture, and actually the roller itself won't last that long.
Don't cheap out. When you're painting, go for the good stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Mind you, oddly enough, for general mini rollers, actually, and rollers, the best place I've found in Dubai, Dragon Mart, JZX are brilliant when they got them in. I haven't always got them in stock, but when they do, I buy their stock. It's simply, what have you got? I'll have it. So
nice.
It's really good stuff there. So very near the is it B? No, it must be. Oh, what's the entrance? One down from the electronics, right at the entrance backside is where they are. I can't remember which one that one is.
Okay,
is it EA that one? Something like that. Darn it. Anyway, it's there, JZX. They've got about 4 stores right around the entrance, and they are excellent, really good suppliers.
Oh, nice. Good to know.
Painting.
There we go. Painting. Wrapped. Now you've got more to think about. And I think the way I like to frame this is we've given you everything you need to think about to ask more questions from your paint supplier, from the person selling you the brushes. As you're looking at your room and you're planning your time, because planning is important.
Yes,
Be realistic. You're never going to do it as fast as you think you can, unless, of course, you're a professional painter. Yep. Most people aren't.
True.
And
even those that are often aren't.
Yeah. So slow as she goes. Guaranteed it's going to take you 25% longer than you think. You're going to run into problems.
Yes.
And as soon as you start going fast, as soon as you start cutting corners, it's going to look horrible. Yeah. So we've given you everything you need to think about.
And the rolling of the room, if you imagine, we talked about 2 days, the rolling of the room, we reckon would take about an hour to an hour and a half, which gives you an idea of all of the extra stuff that's involved with it that you don't think about. You all think about rollering, don't you?
Yeah. I'm just going to paint. It's like, painting is the easy part.
Exactly.
Prep and then takedown.
Yes.
That's going to take you a good hour or so.
Oh, more than that.
Yeah.
Because you will find that you've got paint creep somewhere that you've got to deal with.
Yeah.
Which is paint, or that the tape is pulled off.
Yeah, someone's pulled the tape too hard. It's like, half the paint came off with it.
Or it can just be dodgy ceilings, You get all that daily. It is painful.
Oh, man. Colin, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot today.
I know. I'm so sorry about that.
And we'll talk more about Dragon Mart next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Colin Thomas from Essential Maintenance, We Will Fix It Dubai. I'm James Piecowye. This is the We Will Fix It podcast. And go back and listen to some of the other shows. There's 70 plus to inform, educate, and ultimately entertain. Talk to you later. Bye.